Good morning. Day 248. Happy Labor Day, September 5th. I realized the other day, oh, wait a minute, September 6th. Anyway, I think I got the date wrong the other day, and I probably still got it wrong today. So let's not even go there. It doesn't matter. Anyway, finished the book of John this morning. So we're going to talk about truth one more day. I thought, let's just finish it out. Another aspect or a layer of knowing the truth. And I'm calling it truth recognized. Jesus has been placed in the tomb. His friends go to visit, pay their respects, and they see the tomb, the stone rolled away, and they go and they look and they're like, oh. And John sees the burial linen cloths lying on the ground, but he doesn't go in. Peter's more bold. He goes in, and then he's like, come on, look, oh my God, it's empty. What does this mean? They didn't really understand. They weren't recognizing it right at that moment. And sorry, I have got something flying around me. Anyway, sorry. Anyway, okay, back to recognition. And there was a really interesting detail that the cloth that was around Jesus's head was separate from the others, and it was folded neatly. Well, that's an interesting detail to put in there. What are we supposed to recognize from that? And as I really kind of, you got to slow down sometimes in order to be able to make sense of these details. Really put yourself in there. Like, well, what do I do when I'm folding? What does that mean? Well, I am slowing down. I'm paying attention to details. I'm taking care of something. I'm paying respect to the thing. I'm not just, letting it crumple up and fall to the side. And the fact that it was the head cloth, the head is where we know things. And so maybe paying respect to knowledge, to what the head represents and how it leads, and that we want to take care of it. I don't know, it's kind of fun to go into all these aspects of what that could mean and what it could symbolize. And as I was really thinking about it as well, and as we're going to see in some of the other interactions that Jesus begins having, is that when you go from living one way, being one way, and going to a new way of being, death, that you die to that, you go through that process of sort of maybe being dead, or in that in-between is what I call it, before the new life fully emerges. And that we should respect that whole process. It's not, some people, there's a tendency to want to just go, that old life that person was terrible, blah, 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 just disrespect it. And so maybe we're supposed to honor it and still respect it. That doesn't mean that we're not going to be different. This is where that dualistic thinking comes into play. I think a lot of people have a hard time with. A lot of us are either or, black, white. We have trouble thinking this way, but this is the way to ascend or transcend and become, is to realize and hold space for all of it, both and. That you can realize that you needed to change, life needs to be different and new, and yet respect the role that prior version or that prior life paid, and even the in-between part of dying. That's a lot to get from just folding a cloth. So these two are excited. It starts to dawn on them. They don't fully understand, but it starts to dawn on them. We're told they go home. And then Mary Magdalene enters stage right. Mary Magdalene comes and goes to the tomb. She sees two angels, one sitting at the foot of where Jesus's body was and the other at the head. And she doesn't get it either. Like, where have they taken him? Oh my gosh, I need to go tend to his body. She can't comprehend that the fact that there's no body means that he has risen, that he's come back to life. And she turns around and then sees somebody else that she thinks is a gardener. Well, that's really interesting. Even though we know it's Jesus, we're told it's Jesus, she can't recognize what she's seeing. She can't believe her own eyes. And that's really interesting, because we're also told, because he's going to allow the disciples, when he sees them, to touch the places, where the nails were, and the wound in his side, and the famous scene of doubting Thomas. More than a week later, we'll also get to see for himself and then believe. But, that's really interesting. I thought he was a gardener. She couldn't recognize the truth of what she was seeing. It was so mind-blowing. And there must have been something different about him that sort of blocked her vision or her ability to deceive herself that way. And so this is kind of the concept, that I was camping on, of recognizing truth. It's not always easy. And when we look at Jesus also role modeling, that's Jesus's kind of purpose here on earth, was to role model and show us the way. And then if we put ourselves in that metaphorical or position of dying to ourselves, a version of ourselves dying, a new version of us being born, that we can also expect similar interactions with those that knew the old us. And that takes a while to get used to. We've got to take time with that. We've got to take care to be prepared for that. Maybe taking time to fold, our old clothes, as it were, and get prepared to come out and not be recognized. Because we've talked about this a lot. Humans are made to belong. And this is a separating or learning or knowing and accepting that you are not going to be interacting with your old crew, your people, the same way if they have not gone through a similar transformation. But we can also be reassured, because that is part of why Jesus spent so much time with the disciples and them being able to bond with each other over a common new belief, a new way of being. So they would still belong to this new group, to each other, so their needs would still be met as humans, of belonging. But there still is that sort of painful process in how to interact with people that no longer recognize you as you. You know what I'm saying? And that sometimes, and I think I've even been expressing that in the last few days. It's like living a double life, or living in two worlds. And I am of a sort, because there are some people that I love very much that I'm going to be in their lives no matter what, and interacting. And I don't recognize myself as the same self that they may even be recognizing and think that they're interacting with. There's a little bit of almost a persona that I'm putting up to make it easier for them, so they don't have this recognition problem with me. So I wonder if that's something I need to work on, that I'm recognizing maybe a truth in that. Interesting. You never know what's going to come out sometimes once you think you've processed something, and then you and you keep processing, which is interesting, as I'm even saying that and hearing myself say that in chapter 21. And by the way, if I haven't said that, we're at the last two chapters of John, chapters 20 and 21. There's this moment with Peter, and we know Peter had denied Christ 3 times. And that was a very convicting thing for him. And then Jesus has this really intimate moment with him, giving him the opportunity for redemption. Peter, do you love me? Yes, Lord, you know I love you. Feed my lambs. Peter, do you love me? Yes, I love you. Take care of my sheep. And one more time, 3 times. Peter, do you love me? And Peter's like, his feelings are getting hurt at this point. He's like, but I think there's probably also a recognition of the truth of what Jesus is doing and the need for Peter to shed that prior self, for him to even go through this sort of death and resurrection, and realizing in himself the ability for himself to deny Jesus when he thought that wasn't possible. And now Jesus wants him to put that stake in the ground. And so he says, finally, yes, you know everything. You know that I love you. And then Jesus says, feed my sheep. And there's that detail, even the feed my lambs, take care of my sheep, and then feed my sheep. I think there's something there, but I didn't have time. I'm telling you, scripture is so dense. And when you're reading it for yourself and spending this kind of time with it, God will speak to you in a way that you need to hear. And evidently I needed to hear. I took all work to do, which of course, I'm human. The work will never end. But even the attention maybe that I'm doing in my own life to not fully stepping out of that old life and into the new, because I don't want people to not recognize me. And I'm recognizing that may happen. And there's part of me that's like, I don't know if I want that. I don't know. That's sad. How will this... And maybe I'm still in the process of building my own new crew that I can still be a part of, and that security of having my own life group that will recognize me and that will understand. Yeah. So recognizing the truth. And there's so many details that were even given that we as readers, after he allows Thomas, and this was more than 8 days after he had risen, Thomas, he has him touch the wounds and the side, and they are appearing together in locked rooms. It says that the doors were locked, and all of a sudden Jesus is just there. So he literally is a different type of being now that can evidently go through locked doors and just appear. But he's still very physical, and they can touch and feel and see the wounds. And he tells them that he's not ascending yet to his Father. And then he says, not my Father and your Father. So he's reassuring them of the truth. And then there's this whole scene of them being on the boat, not catching enough fish. And Jesus is cooking them breakfast. So he still needs to eat. He does have a body. He's doing these physical things and living a life. And then he tells them, well, fish from the right side of the boat. And they do. They catch the fish. They even count there's 153 fish. So we're given a lot of details that would corroborate and help us recognize that this isn't just some metaphorical story. There's a lot of metaphor in it and things that we're supposed to get out of it symbolically and metaphorically for ourselves. But these were real events that happened. This isn't just a fantasy story that we're reading. Anyway, recognizing the truth and all these details that are given to us. And after he lets Thomas touch his wounds, he says, and blessed are those, all of you that will believe without seeing. And he's talking to us as the readers, like, because we don't get the benefit of being there and seeing and feeling and touching. We've got to rely on these eyewitnesses' accounts, which is why we have not just, like in our modern standards, where we need at least 3 witnesses. He gives us 4 eyewitnesses. And then, of course, all of the other, people like Paul that will write and testify and be witness. But we're all witnesses. We're all living proof. We're all evidence that allow other people to recognize the truth. There's no other explanation to go from this way to that way. And the transforming that can take place within the human heart with God's help. We literally do things that, and strive to do things, maybe that's a better word, we strive to do things that other humans can't recognize because it's so counterintuitive. To truly love people, even when they're not being lovable. Like, that's what he's calling us to do. Just to see people for more than their behavior. That they are stuck. They are in need of knowing that they are not stuck. Like, they're being driven by their feelings and emotions and their lower selves, but that there's another way. And so we're called to love people, turn the other cheek, all of that, and see beyond what we see, and see the potential if that person chooses. We're not going around begging people. We're giving them the good news. We're not trying to do the work for them. We're inviting and showing them the way. Some people get caught up in trying to do it for others, and to the point that, they're not. We have to invite and then demonstrate. We have to, that phrase that is very popular out in the world that, and sometimes when things get overused, they lose their meaning. But be the change that you want to see. Be that. A lot of times it's easier for us to just look at somebody else and go, yeah, you got some work to do over there. And meanwhile, we're ignoring the plank in our own eye. So constantly, and using even that as an invitation to go, oh, I've got some work to do. I'm noticing something in somebody else. I better, because it's never ending, because we're human. All right, recognizing the truth, finishing up the book of John, and I think heading into Acts tomorrow. That's exciting to start a new book. One day at a time. One day at a time. All right, rise and shine, my friends. I'm off to get some movement in at the gym. Bye.